so dreamy. The first movement of El Castillo de Almodóvar from Adrian Leeper and the Orquesta Filarmónica de Gran Canaria. This is Joaquin Turina. I think I forgot to mention the composer, but it's because I have these two composers sitting across from me right now. I'm a little bit intimidated, I have to admit. Ms. Karen Sunabacka, composer, curator, creator of all sorts, Winnipeg born, did her bachelor in theory and composition at the University of Manitoba, her MA at San Francisco State, and her PhD in theory and composition at the University of California at Davis. She won the CMC Prairie Region Emerging Composers Composition. It would be great if you were an emergency composer as well. She was commissioned to write the 2010 E-grade test piece for a piano year. And she's had commissions from the MCO before, Never to Return and Born by the River, both very lauded. Other works have been premiered by ensembles including the Brandon Chamber Players, the WSO, the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra, and other ensembles. But also, she's going to be premiering a brand new piece tomorrow night at Cinematheque by Cléo Palacio-Quintin, hyper-flutist and composer. And we have both of them here in the studio. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Sorry, say that again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Perfect. Sorry, we got to turn on your mics. I was so excited. I'm also very intimidated to have such incredible musicians across from me. So, Karen, tell us a little bit. You're a cellist is your instrument, right?
It is.
And one of the first things I have to ask a composer is what instrument they first fell in love with. Was yours the cello, or was there something before or after for you?
It's a really funny story, actually.
Yeah.
I started on the piano, but I was like 4.
Right.
We went to England for a year with my family, and I played recorder for a year. And then we came back. My dad is an amateur violist, and he said to me, do you want to play violin, viola, cello, or continue with piano? And I said, well, how do you play the cello? And he said, well, you go like this. And, you know, you use your fingers in your left hand and you bow in your right. But to me, that looked like an accordion.
Oh, no.
So I said, I want to play that one.
Nice.
And I got this weird shaped instrument and not an accordion.
Oh.
So, which is funny, but I really loved it. So,
amazing.
Yeah. So that was when I was about 5, 6.
So really accordion was the one that you wanted.
Yes. But then I fell in love with the cello afterwards.
Afterwards. Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's wonderful. Yeah. And Cleo, did you have a similar story with flute?
No, mine is not that funny because, but mine is also a bit awkward because I actually wanted to play violin when I was a kid.
Okay.
But then my mother, who knows nothing about music, but except now she's my #1 fan. But
of course,
at that time she had no training in music at all, and she thought, oh no, violin is too difficult to start, and but I was already too old to start violin actually, but she didn't know about it.
Right.
But then she decided, you should start with recorder just to see if you like to play music and learn the basics, and then we'll see. So then what happened is finally I started on recorder for several years, and then I saw older students that were studying with the same teacher coming with flutes, and then I thought, oh wow, that's beautiful, I want to play this. So that's how I became a flutist.
Excellent.
So that was not planned.
Well, and the way that your flute playing has evolved, we'll talk about in a little bit as well, because that is incredibly fascinating. We'll talk about your hyper-fluting. But before we go on, when did you last perform as a cellist, Karen? Like that's a question I've been wanting to ask you for a little while.
I still play a little bit. Yeah.
Because you teach at Providence as well.
I teach at Providence, and I teach cello still to students out there mostly. And I play amateurly, but I say amateurly, but at Providence there's a trio that I play in pretty regularly out at Providence and in the rural community down there. So I do trios, Brahms trios. It's really fun because there's not the same kind of pressure as when I was like on the way to become a professional cellist. It's like playing music I love to play. We've done a few of my pieces.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, it's really
and
fun.
Liberating.
Yes.
I'm sure. So what was it that drew you to composition from being a cellist? Like more primarily.
Yeah,
really.
It was actually at the University of Manitoba. They have a fantastic theory program that I now teach as well, but it was the Horton Ritchie Harmony Through Melody theory texts.
Yeah.
And we were composing music in all these different styles. And after my second year, that all stopped because I was done and I wanted to keep going. So I went and sat down and talked with Michael Matthews and said, I think I want to be a composer. And as a kid, I used to do like impromptu tape pieces. My cousin and I would like record everything and make just different things. So I was kind of doing a lot of creative things like that.
That's so great. You know what? It's funny because Heidi Willette was here in the studio, and she said the very same thing about just sitting at the piano and turning on a tape recorder when she was a kid and just playing and like writing these operas. You know, it's like a common thing with you guys. I don't know. I never did that. Maybe that's why I'm not a composer. I don't know. Maybe
Well, my uncle's a composer, so Bruce Carlson is a composer too. So I used to go to his premieres too when I was a kid. So it wasn't out of the family. It was something I was seeing.
Well, and that's you kind of have to learn by osmosis things like this. And I mean, I didn't come from a musical family as either, Cleo. And so for you, how did that happen for you? How did you end up going from playing to composing?
Actually, yeah, for me, the playing to composing really came from the performance side, like as an improviser.
Okay.
So for me, it's actually improvisation that came first. My really creative, nature was to wanting to improvise. So I was trained as a classic flutist for many years.
And you were at the Université de Montreal, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But then even before that, actually in high school, I started playing in jazz bands.
Cool.
And that's where I started playing improv. And for me, then improvisation was the thing that led me to later on to do composition.
Awesome.
But I've been doing lots of improvisation for many years, and then ended up finally writing music. But actually my first composition was a piece. I played a concert and recorded it, and then I transcribed it afterwards. So
great.
my first official composition is like that.
As a transcribed improvisation.
Yeah.
Which is, you know what, there's nothing wrong with that though, because if you think about it, I mean, when these composers of like the 17th century sat down at a keyboard and just whipped something out, they basically did the same thing.
Yeah, sure.
They just didn't have the recording technology. Well, there you go. All right, so let's go on. So there was, I don't know if you guys read this, Karen. I don't know if you were back in town yet, but there was a really provocative article written by Holly Harris in the Winnipeg Free Press about the New Music Festival. You're nodding your head as though you've read this. Okay, so talking about the underrepresentation of female composers at the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra's recent New Music Festival. Now, you have been involved with the New Music Festival before, have had pieces performed at the festival. But you're also involved with an organization called the International Association of Women in Music.
Right.
So perhaps you could share your opinion about this article that Holly wrote. I mean, just share some thoughts.
It was a great article. I think it's just in the last number of years there have been less and less women represented, and the ones that have been represented have been from elsewhere, like a lot more American women composers. I think it's just a matter of the person who's making the program doing good research. That's what it is for me. So the last few years I've been pretty disappointed. I did have a not a great conversation at one point, and so I've had a harder time going to the New Music Festival for that reason. Just because I don't see my peers. I don't see the music that I want to hear in some ways. Right. I like to see a good variety. And that is the best thing. So to see Holly Harris write that article, I actually got in touch with her and via email just to thank her for actually noticing, because I feel like people don't notice. It feels a little bit. So.
Well, and we're lucky to have Holly to bring that to light. I mean, it's not something that we necessarily always think about either. It's like, I think a lot of the time it's just an unconscious decision. You know, we've been fed male composers for so long, and they are the people who are in the limelight. So why not select them? I mean, but just because they are the only ones being represented doesn't mean that they're the only composers out there.
Yeah, and it's partly who you know, like, as well, right? So when you're in a group of people, you tend to want to work with the people that you know, and that can be exaggerated in these larger organizations. So I know it's hard, but I mean, on our program, it's mostly women composers.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah.
Which is great. So, Monique Jean and both of you. Who else is on the program?
There's also Chantal Laplante, another composer from Montreal.
Okay.
So, yeah, we're 4 women composers, and there's one piece by Martin Arnold, who's a Toronto composer.
Excellent. And so how did you choose the program? And Karen, well, let's talk about how this became a project, and then we'll go to a quick break and we'll talk a little bit more about what we're going to hear. So how did the two of you begin interacting?
It was through the Canadian New Music Network.
Okay.
I was the board representative for Manitoba. And so I ended up having these Skype meetings. I didn't actually meet Cleo in person for like probably a year and a half or something, but I heard her voice on the through Skype
Right, yeah.
for a while. And then I always really liked her too. So what she was saying. But then we were at at the Forum in Vancouver, and Cleo presented about her hyperflutes. And
What forum? Can I ask you what forum?
Yeah, it was just the Canadian New Music Forum.
Oh,
they do
okay,
them
sorry.
every 2 years.
Okay, cool.
And so they're in different cities across Canada.
Okay.
And so the first one was in Winnipeg, around the Winnipeg New Music Festival in 2005 or 6. It was something around then. I don't know if you remember. Anyways, it was around. And so so Cleo presented at the Forum about her hyperflutes. And I feel like I was sitting like in the front row, and I was like, I want to work with you. So
Amazing.
that was how
Yeah, so then Karen and then we had met through this network and kept in touch. And so she's the one who said, oh, I really would love to write a piece for you.
Excellent.
And we've been talking about this for several years. Yes. And then there was this occasion when she got with Groundswell as
An opportunity to curate.
an opportunity to have me coming over and performing a piece of hers. So
as well as these other female and one male composer.
Yeah, and actually the whole program is all music that's been written for me. It's all repertoire that has been composed for myself. I've commissioned all those pieces actually. And I was really happy that I could replay them because some pieces have been performed and premiered earlier several years ago.
Okay.
And we have few chances to replay repertoire. Like it's really
rare, especially for new musicians.
Yeah, for new music, we most of the time we just play premieres, and then we have to, then it's
the next
done,
premiere.
and the next project we do other new pieces. So this concert for me is great because I have two new pieces. There's Karen's and there's Monique Jean, who also wrote a new piece for this concert. But actually, and then I organized, of course, a series of concerts. So I've been touring this program.
Excellent.
I made it in Montreal first at the beginning of the month.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've been in Lethbridge, Alberta, and I've been in Victoria,
Excellent.
in BC, and now I'm here.
And where do you go after this?
Then I get back home.
Okay, great.
That's the last concert of the tour, is the Winnipeg one.
We're so glad that we're your last concert. Okay, we're going to go to a quick station break, and then we're going to talk about why the hyperflute and writing for it is so unique. Because I think that's something that our audience is definitely going to want to know, and it'll definitely draw some curious ears, I'm sure. You are in the Diamond Lane with me, Sarah Jo, hyperflutist composer Cléo Palacio-Quintin, and composer-curator Karen Sunabacka. Be back in just a moment. And we are back here in the Diamond Lane on Classic 107 in Winnipeg, fresh in the studio with Groundswell's guest hyperflutist Cléo Palacio-Quintin and curator Karen Sunabacka, who's also a composer. Both of them are. And they are presenting a concert, Electric Breath, tomorrow night at Cinematheque at the Art Space Building downtown in the Exchange District. So if you want to go, check out gswell.ca, or you can go to our website, classic107.com. Ladies, we need to talk about what the hyperflute is. So Cléo, because this is such a unique instrument, I mean, well, it is a flute, and you play flutes, multiple flutes.
Yeah, but actually mainly the standard flute that everybody knows, but I also play lots of bass flutes. So that's actually the same instrument, but it's twice bigger.
Right.
So it plays an octave lower, and it has a kind of different sound quality because it's really much bigger than the standard flute.
Timbre.
Yeah. And that's I would say one of my favorite instrument. I really played a lot as a soloist, and that's a less known instrument. We don't see that often, so that's quite special. But both my flutes then are very special because, as I call them, hyper flutes.
Right.
Because I've been augmenting them with sensors. So both my flutes have a complex system of electronic sensors on them that actually can capture my gestures. So I have sensors on my flute that can capture the pressure of my fingers on it, my hand pressure, my position, how I move with the instrument, if I lift the flute high or down, or if I turn it. So I have all these gestures that are captured by these sensors, and through an interface, then they are transformed into digital numbers and get to a computer.
So who designed these sensors for you?
I actually did myself all the design and the soldering to fix all these things together. And of course, I had a couple of engineers who helped me out for technicalities, to know how to plug things well and so on. Right. But that was long ago, actually. My first, my standard flute, my hyper-flute, I made it in 1999. So I've been playing with that instrument for many years already.
Can't be that.
And then developing the idea is then that these gestural sensors permit me to communicate with a computer while I play. So what I do is that I'm doing live electronics. I'm having all my sound transformed by a computer, but I do also control what the computer is doing with my gestures. So it's like a really augmented flute. I have and I play, the flute, like the acoustic flute.
Right, yes.
A lot.
Yeah.
But then I have all this electronic sounds extension of it. That's also, that I also really perform.
Right. It sounds like it would have to be quite choreographed if you wanted to recreate something, or even in improvisation, I'm sure, like different movements inspiring different reactions from your interface.
Yeah.
That's so fascinating. I love that. I'm so excited to watch this, not just listen to it. I feel like that's going to be part of it, is figuring out how the movement is attached to the sound and vice versa.
Yeah, it's not necessarily always obvious because most of these gestures are very sensitive. Just the pressure of my thumb on the instrument. Of course, you can't see that from the audience. Yeah. But there's actually on the program, the last piece on the program is a composition of mine where I also do live video processing. So this is more obvious because you have the visual aspect and some of the interfacing is more direct, so that you can notice if you're very very focused on my gesture and the image, that each time my flute reaches towards my stand, then the image gets bigger. And so there's my gestures are actually changing the mix of photos and videos in the size of the image on the screen. So that's more obvious with the video. Then with the sound, of course, it's more abstract, so it's more difficult to grasp what's doing what. But for me, it's obvious, and I know when I move what's the sound result it's going to be.
And as far as the visual element, is it found footage or is it generated footage, and where did it come from?
It's all my own footage also.
Okay.
Mostly but this piece it's called Synesthesia for Chlorophyll. And that's
awesome.
all about plants and green stuff. Yeah. So it's a green piece.
Excellent.
So it's all photos and videos of greeneries, of trees, plants, many close-ups of leaves, and so all very green things. Yeah. And most of them I did myself, like all the video and most of the photos. And I have several photos also that were given to me by a friend, photograph, who just made so nice green photos. And I asked, can I use them? Yeah. So I have some photos by Pascal Lizo, but most of it is from myself.
Excellent. Well, we're so glad to get to host you here in Winnipeg. Welcome to Winnipeg. This is your first time here playing here.
It's my first visit. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here.
And we are so glad to have you, and we're so glad to have you back, Karen, as always. Come visit us anytime. This is Karen Sunabacka, composer, curator, and hyper-flutist composer Cléo Palacio-Quintin. Electric Breath happens tomorrow, 8 p.m. at Cinematheque, the Art Space building at 100 Arthur Street. You can find more information at gswell.ca or on our website, classic107.com. It has been such a pleasure to have you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great to be here.
It's inspiring, not just as a new music enthusiast, but as a female musician and aspiring improviser, and it's just great. So thanks for being here. Go check it out tomorrow night. We are going to go to a short break, and then we are going to come back with a double concerto from Astor Piazzolla for a little sass, because who doesn't need a little sass on a Tuesday? All right. You're in the Diamond Lane with me, Sarah Jo.